stuff. Yeah.
With each passing month, little James Leininger seemed to be peeling back memories of a past life. Vivid memories that scared and astonished his parents.
Bruce had always said, what kind of plane did you fly? And he said, a Corsair.
He said a Corsair?
He said the word Corsair.
Not only did James remember flying a Corsair, he demonstrated knowledge of the plane's peculiarities. At the time, he was flipping through a book about planes when he was 4.
He got to the Corsair, he said, that's a Corsair. And he goes, you know what? They used to get flat tires all the time.
In fact, historians and pilots agree that the plane's tires took a lot of punishment on landing. Of course, this is a fact that could easily be found in books or on TV. But then, James began to offer up the kinds of specific details his parents say are harder to explain away.
Another night, Bruce had come in and he said, do you remember where your plane took off? And he said it took off of a boat. Do you remember the name of your boat? Natoma. Do you remember what your name was? And he'd always say, James. But his name is James. It never really occurred to us. We thought he just wasn't understanding the question. So I said, do you remember any friends or anyone else that you flew with? And he said, Jack Larson.
Bruce began doing some research. Almost immediately, he discovered that the Natoma was an actual ship, a small aircraft carrier in the Pacific called the Natoma Bay. And Jack Larson, the Navy buddy little James recalled? Well, it turns out there was a pilot named Jack Larson who served aboard the Natoma Bay. In fact, he's alive and well and living in Arkansas.
And it was like, holy mackerel. I mean, really, you could have poured my brains out of my ears. And I just couldn't believe it.
And there were more clues. Around this time, James began signing crayon drawings and other artwork. James 3.
When they asked him why he's calling himself James 3, well, because I'm the third James. And every once in a while he'd ask him that today, and he'll still say the same thing.
And one day, while leafing through a new book about the Battle of Iwo Jima, Bruce turned to an aerial photo of the Pacific island. James was seated nearby.
He pointed to it and goes, Daddy, that's where my airplane was shot down. And I said, what? That's my airplane got shot down there, Daddy. And I just went blank. I couldn't say anything.
By then, Bruce had become a man possessed, searching the internet, combing through military records, and interviewing men who served aboard the Natoma Bay. Finally, a breakthrough. He learned that there was just one pilot from the squadron killed at Iwo Jima. That pilot, James M. Houston Jr. Is this why little James was calling himself James 3?
It just crystallized in my mind. This has to be who we're talking about. You know, my meter of skepticism was starting to go over toward belief.
When little James would describe being shot down, he told of how his plane had sustained a direct hit on the engine.
We had an airplane, and I said, well, can you show me where it was? And he pointed right up to the front of the engine.
That's what makes this man's story so intriguing. His name is Ralph Clarber. Clarber was a rear gunner on a TBM Avenger that flew off the Natoma Bay. On March 3rd, 1945, he took part in a raid near Iwo Jima. As it happens, Clarber's plane was right next to the one flown by James M. Houston Jr. It was to be Hugh's last mission before leaving for home the following day. As Clarber recalls, the sky was thick with enemy flag.
We experienced pretty heavy aircraft fire, but this was the most intense that I experienced at any time.
Suddenly, a flash blew the nose of Houston's plane.
I saw the hit. I would say he was hit head on. Yeah, right on the middle of the engine.
Just as little James had described it. But what do you believe now about your son James?
I believe that he had a past life. I believe that in his past life he was James M. Houston Jr. And he came back because he wasn't finished with something. And that's essentially what I believe.
Dear Bruce and Andrea.
And he's not the only one. This past October, the Leiningers received a letter from a woman named Ann Barron, the sister of pilot James Houston. Andrea and Bruce had contacted her about their little boy. Barron heard about what young James was saying, and she believes.
All of this is still overwhelming. I can only imagine how it has affected you, but I believe, with my love to you, Anne, the child was there is a spiritual thing.
I think that the parents are self-deceived, that they're fascinated by the mysterious, and they built up a fairy tale.
Professor Paul Kurtz of the University of Buffalo heads an organization that investigates claims of the paranormal.
He's overhearing conversations of his parents. He's looking at cues. He may talk to his little friends or hear from neighbors. And then this conviction that builds up that yes, he was this pilot, and yes, he will come to believe that himself.
Do you ever rack your brain and say, gee, I hope I didn't say anything or do anything that put this in James' head? Do you ever question yourself still or no?
No, because we're talking to a 2-year-old. You know, I mean, what am I going to do? Sit him in a corner and say, listen, now we're going to concoct this elaborate scheme, and you're going to imagine that you went through those things.
I knew what he watched on television. I knew what stories I read to him. I'm a protective, first-time Southern mother. There was no other place he could have been getting this information.
Assuming the liners are acting in good faith, what we have here is a classic conflict of faith versus science. Hard facts against beliefs that often can't be easily explained. There's no doubt where Paul Kurtz stands.
People have a right to believe, surely in America, it's freedom of conscience. On the other hand, do you want to believe in something that is false?
So how do you rationalize a belief in anything bigger than ourselves if you have to fall back on science all the time?
Not simply science, on the facts, on common sense.
Once upon a time, the Leinigers might have agreed. That was before the amazing stories told by their young son forced them to consider the possibilities and to examine their faith.
Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it's about the eternal life of the human spirit. And that's something God promises to us. There is something else out there. After this, it's not over when you die.
James's vivid recollections are starting to fade as he gets older. But among his prized possessions are 2 gifts sent to him by pilot James Houston's sister. A bust of George Washington and a model of a Corsair aircraft. They were among the personal effects of James Houston, sent home after the war. Do you feel differently about James? Has this changed your relationship with him?
No. We have always felt that he's a special little boy because he's our son. He appears to have experienced something that I don't think is unique, but the way it's been revealed is quite astounding. It doesn't change how we think. I don't look at him and say, that's not my son, that's someone else, that's my boy.
Good one. It might be a natural assumption that it's just Buddhists and Hindus who believe in reincarnation, but would it surprise you to know that 1 out of every 4 Americans, Christians and Jewish alike, believe that souls do return again in different bodies? We'll be right back.
No, I'd like to make a comment or two, and we can open it to discussion. There's a couple of, it's okay. You can turn it back off of that now.
Turn this off?
Yeah, no, turn it to me now. Okay, that's all right. I'm just two things. One is there's a popular misconception that karma and reincarnation is a religious thing, but it really isn't. It's a law of nature.
I don't know how to do it.
That's okay. And the second thing is there are increasing number of scientists that are becoming convinced, there's traditional scientists like Dr. Stevenson and a colleague of his, laureate from University of Georgia down that way in Athens. So, and we all know, we all understand in this group anyway, the process of reincarnation, karma, evolution, etc. So with that, we will close the discussion from the platform and open it to the floor. Questions, comments? And
This is a question. There's something called Kirlian photography, and I'm kind of curious. The Kirlian photography is supposed to be able to capture the electromagnetic force around an object, and I've seen pictures of a leaf, and they've taken pictures and seen the sort of the light around it until you cut the leaf to the degree that there's maybe more than a third that's missing, and then that life force sort of comes in, sort of an aura. To your knowledge, is there anything that's been done scientifically with being able to use the Kirlian photography or some type of technology to be able to measure the energy around a being, especially when the being drops the body, whether that life force is still present? Anything like that?
I've actually heard people talk about trying to do that, and from time to time people have popped up and talked about it. So I think it's happening, the way this student understands it. There are people who are to at least some degree being able to do what you're suggesting. That it is coming out in photography.
And then the other thing is, how can it benefit one, to know their past lives?
That is a question that really has come up quite a bit before, and you know that, you probably know that too. That's why you ask it. It's very important for us to understand that we are making our bed for the future. Not only our bed, but the bed of all of humanity, all of nature, really, because we are having an impact on nature. It's hard to understand it sometimes, what our link is to the tsunami, etc. But everything occurs to teach us a lesson, a karma part of it. It occurs to teach us a lesson, and we get into the different types of karma, the individual karma, the national karma, etc. So, we're setting the scene for the future, and we need to understand that. And we're not getting it because we're putting this power in an outside God, and that God is within us just as much as that God is out there. We are very powerful, much more powerful than we think we are, individually and collectively. So that's why it's so critically important that we understand this process, that we develop our knowledge so that we can change our ways to better everyone around us. Does that help you? Okay.
May I make a comment?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is very important to understand that evolution is on a continuum, that the death that we talk about is just a rest period, as a sleep is, except that the death period is longer because it is there for the assimilation of all of the experiences of the soul that it has gone through that 100-year period. Not only that, but in all of the religions, there is such a thing as forgiveness, that we're forgiven for all of our misdeeds. There is no such law in nature. The natural law provides an opportunity for us to correct our mistakes and bring back harmony into the world rather than friction. But we are not forgiven for our misdeeds, as religions say, because it takes the responsibility away from each human individual. We are responsible for our actions, and karma and reincarnation just is the way that nature works. We're not excluded from it. As part of it, as part of the law, we come back to continue with that developmental process that we go through in each incarnation.
Absolutely. Some of these things, like you mentioned, death. It said that death is something that we invented. There's no such thing as death.
It's illusion.
And you talked about forgiveness. Well, no, we're setting the stage, and we're thinking, well, what did I do to deserve this, etc. Well, we need that experience, and which is what we come into.
Karma then is cause and effect, or cause and then consequences of whatever you have set into motion. I have read also that it's possible to ameliorate the karma even in one's lifetime. If you change your thought, you change your action. So to change that karma of long ago or whatever you set into motion, even in that same lifetime, it can be done if there's some type of acknowledgement or awareness of the wrongdoing, and then a correction in terms of thought, word, and action. Is that according to HPB also?
Generally, that is true. However, there are certain categories, and you know, we have lectures on karma. But if you set something in motion, basically you got to live it out. And certainly, you can mitigate the consequences based on how you react to that karma that you put into motion. But depending on the stage of which you put it in motion, you can maybe totally mitigate it, or only mitigate it to a degree. You've just got to bear with it and live it out. Yeah.
A couple of things. Is the settling of karmic accounts in the law of karma apparently exists throughout, and so something that's done in another life experience is accounted for in another life experience. And so in that second life experience, you say, if you stop to ask why is this happening to me? You may not know, but it more than likely is something that you need to be more aware of as being something that's a settling of an account, karmic account. Okay. Now, I think the question that you're asking is, you know, can you avoid that? Can you avoid that situation of settling the account by doing something good or doing something else to avoid the consequence of that negative action? And I've always understood that to be yes, that can happen if you are vibrating at a higher level than you were at the time when you put this thing out there. It is possible, if you've done some work, to be able to be at a different level, so that when that comes around, instead of you being there to settle that account gets settled because of the level which you've reached.
I would not want to say that we can avoid our karma. No, we can't do it. To a degree, we can change the attitude of our mind and see that as a challenge and an opportunity to learn.
Well, let me put it this way. If you deal with it from the physical definition of karma, which is cause and effect, if I deal with you in a coarse manner, and that has an effect on you, isn't it possible that if I also dealt with you in a more friendly manner, that the effect that would have on you would be different than the effect that I put out there to begin with? So I put a negative cause out there, you've got a negative effect, okay? But I was able, in this same lifetime, to come back to you with a different cause to bring about a different effect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so...
But if, let's say these two incidences, that's all I know about you. You come at me one day and with something, and that was unpleasant, okay? And it affected me in a certain way. Well, until you come back to me with in a friendly manner, it's affected me in that way.
Right.
Okay, and yeah, it's certainly mitigating the karma, no question.
Okay.
Okay.
That's not really what I want to talk about.
Okay.
I want to get to...
I want to make a comment.
Yeah.
Events are recorded. They do not just disappear. Whatever we think, whatever we say, whatever we do are recorded on that Akashic record, and it cannot be eliminated. That one event is separate in its effect, so to speak, from the other event. That all that negative negativity that is created that just does not disappear, because the student that gave the talk on karma said when you throw a pebble into the water in a lake, it opens up and opens up all the way. It goes to the shoreline of that lake. It affects all of the water in that lake. So that feeling we put out is not just affecting him.
Even though nobody heard it.
It is recorded. It affects all of the Akashic record, totality of the record of humanity. We are interlinked. None of us are separate entities. We are as individuals, but our activity, our thoughts are united. It's all recorded, and everybody feels it. It's not just him feeling it. And once you put it into effect, it will go out in larger circles, and it will spread itself to the world, because that Akashic record is total humanity. It's not portions. So yes, you suppose we kill somebody. Now we're saying we can mitigate that. How would we mitigate? By removing that person's chance of experience in that life. Even though the karma is linked, he wouldn't have received it if we didn't do something together before. Because it's the effect coming to him in this life. But that doesn't mean that it was the correct action on the other person, because there could have been other things that could perhaps be done to prevent that soul losing its body in this life, because the soul cannot experience with it. Please let me finish. The soul cannot experience life without going through the experiences of that lifetime. So his life got cut short. How can we mitigate that? Okay, perhaps we go and talk to the family, apologize for the misdeed we have conducted, do charity on behalf of humanity, but it doesn't change that specific event that took place. We can mitigate it to some degree by taking an oath that we will conduct ourselves not in that manner, by changing our ideology in believing that you come back, you're going to come back and face your actions of a previous life, whether you know it or not. It is better to acknowledge that you know it and then go from that viewpoint in mitigating the circumstances. But the event is recorded. The person lost that opportunity for that lifetime. So we will come back and face it. And sometimes in childhood, people die. And we say, what on earth did he do to deserve that? The poor kid is only 2 years old and has leukemia. But the leukemia did not come to that child out of nothing. It is perhaps from a previous karmic occurrence that it comes. Because the soul is old. It has lived many, many lifetimes. But the body is young.
Yeah, and it gets into all the other things too, being an agent of karma, individual. There's a lot of factors involved there. Maybe the parents needed that experience. I had several hands going up over here. Here, you had your chance once, so we can go for a second.
Einstein said that no solution can be found from the same level of consciousness.
From the what?
Same level of consciousness. Yeah.
Say that again, please, sir.
No solution to a problem can be found from the same level of consciousness.
No solution to a problem can be found from the same level of consciousness.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means.
Exactly
Yeah.
what you said. It's exactly what it means.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was shorter than that. So,
I like yours better than
but
my one.
the two of them together, I might have not understood all that in-depth thing if had it not been for both of you making those comments.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Did you have something there?
Well, I guess so. I guess the point is that what you're saying is that you cannot avoid settling your karmic debt.
Yeah.
There's no way to avoid that. That's going to happen.
But you have control over how you do it.
Okay, fine. All right. I wanted to get to what I was really interested in.
Okay.
and that is the process of reincarnation. I'm not talking about the cycles.
It says 25 minutes on here.
Well, it probably won't show up on the video then.
Shall I
Turn it
check?
off and turn it back on. We'll